Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we are finally getting our hands on the Vittorio Veneto. So, with that being said, let's look at our commander build. Now, I decided to do something against my own play style and do what everybody wants to see, which is a full secondary build on the Vittorio Veneto for the memes, for the secondaries, the SAP, and I'm going to show you just why this is the most ridiculously dumb thing that I think you can do with this ship. Spartan, how dare you? Alright, let me explain, alright? So first of all, let's look at our commander. If you're going to go with secondaries for this thing, you got to go Paolo di Revel. It is your tank build. It is what's going to get you to actually be able to get close enough to use your secondaries. And we'll go into the... So we are running Paolo di Revel with Haruna and Franz von Hipper as our inspirations. All of our commanders are pretty high level. We got di Revel is a 15-3, Haruna is a 16-2, and the Franz von Hipper is a 16-3. So very high level commanders, keep that in mind. Which means we are getting almost the maximum out of this build. Okay? We're not running Brawler because it's even worse. Like, if you use Brawler on this, the range of your Battleship's main guns is even less. And I'm telling you, it's absolutely awful the way it is right now. So not one for the nuisance is what we choose for the first perk. Then we go with Porcupine because of the secondaries. So we get the Porcupine up in there, and then we switch to Firefighter to help control the fires and stuff on this thing as well. And then, of course, we have Master Mechanic, which gives you your extra heals. If we can get this thing to 16, that would be great, because then we would get 6 heals instead of 5. Alright, that I don't have a problem with. If you want to run a normal, Brawler commander with this, fine. But maxing out the secondaries, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And we'll go over that. But we are running Will to Rebuild here as well. Now, let's look at what we built our ship with. We got the secondary booster in the first mat. This is stupid. Don't do this unless you have, unless you're a masochist, don't do this. Go with Aiming Systems Mod 1. Give yourself a fighting chance to actually hit the enemy outside of 8 kilometers. Okay? I promise you, this ship and the Roma both have the exact same issue. Why? Because they're the exact same ship. One of them gets a smoke generator and one of them gets SAP secondaries, and that's it. That is literally the difference between this and the Roma. They're literally sister ships. It's kind of like Iowa, Missouri, okay? Literally same ships, except Missouri gets radar because reasons. Even though all of the Iowa class had radar. But, you know, what do I know? Anyway, so I highly recommend Aiming Systems Mod 1, okay? And then, of course, Secondary Battery Mod 2 is what we're using for the secondary build here. Alright, then we're using Steering Gears Mod 2, which is going to come in handy in this one. I know a lot of people like to run Propulsion Mod. This is kind of up to you. You can do whatever you like here. But personally, I like Steering Gears because I like to try to dodge the torpedoes that everybody sends at me, even if we're not necessarily the most effective at it all the time. Then, of course, we don't have a choice. We've got Target Acquisition Mod, and we have the Secondary Battery Mod 3 to, again, add to those secondaries, the whole reason of this build, right? So we're going to do all of the things. We are fully upgraded as well, and we are running the Alpha Tester flag, which does nothing. It is literally just, you know, a cosmetic item. We are running the camo. It's the Type 1 camo, but we have it permanent, and we have it maxed out, so we're getting a 4.5% bonus on both. So there you go. And we are running an Epic Battle Booster. Without this Epic Battle Booster, which we will take off, and I will show you what our range is with our main guns. Obviously, we're keeping the Enhanced Secondary Targeting on there because it's a secondary build. If you're not running this on a secondary build, you're just, I don't know, you're weird. But we also have this Exhaust Smoke Generator, which we've already talked about. This thing is kind of nice for a battleship. It's a little weird. Do not fire your guns if you're going to use this. Why? Because you will be spotted. Okay? So keep that in mind. I oftentimes hit this by accident when I'm trying to hit my my secondary booster. So you'll see me kind of screw that up earlier or later on in the video. But yeah, so all of that. And of course we have 5 heals. We will get 6 if we can get Paolo di Revel up to the 16. So keep that in mind. Survivability. 64,800 hit points with a 43% torp reduction, which is fantastic, and that's going to come in handy later on. Okay? Artillery, you have 9 381mm 50 caliber auto 1939s. 381 millimeters is 15-inch guns, which means anything with 27-inch bow and above, you do not overmatch. Okay? So keep that in mind. These are only, and I say only, these are only 15-inch guns. Keep that in mind. They have a firing range of just 16.8 kilometers with this build. And that's not even running the Brawler perk. Keep that in mind. We did not run the Brawler perk. That would be even worse. It would be in the 15s if you ran the Brawler perk. Don't do it. The reload time, awful on this thing. 32.2 seconds for 15-inch guns. What? And then 180-degree turn time is decent at 30 seconds. They fire HE with a maximum shell damage of 5,800 and a 24% chance to set fires. The AP shells have a maximum AP shell damage of 12,000. So not too bad, but not great either. Secondaries, you get 90mm 50 caliber auto 1939s. You get 12 of those, which means you get 6 of those per side, which is not good. Okay, keep that in mind. Firing range is 7.8 kilometers. Remember, this is a maxed secondary build. 7.8. You might get 7.9, maybe, if you have all of everything maxed completely out. Maybe 8 if you're really, really lucky. Like, if you've got everything completely maxed, 16 Legendary 4, maybe you hit 8 kilometers. But doubtful. But they reload in 2.4 seconds, which is not bad. But you only get 6 per side. Okay? They fire SAP, which is their gimmick, right? That have a maximum shell damage of 2,000. Now, 90mm guns, firing SAP, probably not going to be the most useful against battleships. But maybe light cruisers and destroyers, or maybe, you know, some of the heavier cruisers and destroyers and light cruisers, I could see maybe these being a little more effective. Now, however, you do have 152mm secondaries, and you have 12 of those, which means you get 6 of those per side of the ship. So you have a maximum of 12 guns of secondaries on either side of the ship. These reach out to 7.8 kilometers as well and reload in 3.2 seconds, which is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, that is fantastic for a 152mm secondary. And those are 55 caliber guns, which means they have good velocity as well, which means they have good penetration. And because they also fire SAP, they can actually do some serious damage, especially against even harder targets than usual. Even a broadside battleship will notice SAP coming in from these 152s. And because they fire every 3.2 seconds, it can be pretty effective. However, the range is what really kills these things, okay? And they're not the most accurate in the world. Like, when you have the booster running, fine, they're accurate. But outside of that, they're kind of in between a German secondary and an American secondary. American secondaries are like laser beams. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just watch a Massachusetts and watch the grouping of those shells. It is a cluster of shells, and almost every one of them hits the target. Okay? So keep that in mind. That's why I like the Massachusetts secondaries over the Bismarck and the Grosse Kerfers, even though they have larger secondaries, because ours is only 5-inch secondaries on our American battleships. So we have the 127mm 5-inch 38s, and they are slower reloading, I believe. And they don't do necessarily as much damage, but they do decent job of setting fires. They like to knock out torpedoes. They do all the good things because they just hit the target more often. And these aren't that, it's not that these aren't that accurate, because at the ranges that you're engaging from, even these hit the target. But it's getting into those ranges that's the problem. And like I said, they fire SAP with a maximum shell damage of 3,800. Okay? AA defense is just non-existent. For a tier 7 ship, it is abysmal. We have 20mm 70 caliber Beretta 1941s. You get 48 of those, right? 8 times 6 is 48, I think. 50 damage per second, reaching out to just 2 kilometers. Very close range. Okay, then you got the 37mm 54 caliber Beretta 1932s that you get 24 of that do 139 damage per second and reach out to 3.5 kilometers. And then you've got the 90mm 50 caliber Auto 1939 dual-purpose secondaries that you have 12 of that do 114 damage per second and reach out to 4 kilometers. So again, secondaries on this thing, or the AA on this thing, not particularly amazing, especially for tier 7 and the ships that you're going to be going, or the planes that you're going to be going up against. Okay? Maneuverability. Maximum speed of 30 knots is solid. It's not that bad. Turning circle radius of 810 meters is not bad. It's kind of middle of the road. It's not awful. It's not great. And with our rudder shift mod, we've been able to get our rudder shift just down to 12.4 seconds with the Hull B upgrade, obviously. So without the Hull B, this thing is awful. It's like 25 seconds or something like that. It's rough. It's maybe 22 seconds. I forget. But either way, you have to have this thing fully upgraded to get any sort of rudder shift out of this thing. And then if you go with the rudder mod over the propulsion mod, you'll be able to turn halfway decent. 12.5 seconds isn't too bad. You can get used to it. Concealment. 14.5 kilometers is pretty average for a battleship. Tier 7. Detectability by air is 12.2. Guaranteed is always 2. And detectability while firing in smoke is great for a battleship, but still 13.9 kilometers, which is why I say that if you use your smoke screen and you fire your guns, you're almost certainly going to be detected. It's the way it is. Okay? Armor. The armor in this thing isn't the worst. Much like the Roma, it is relatively tanky when bow in. But also, like the Roma, it does not have turtleback armor, and if you go broadside, you get removed, as we will showcase later in this match as well. So, you've got your 32mm armor at the front. Everybody knows and loves for battleships at the front. So, you got 32mm deck as well, and then that's just the fore and the end deck. So, you've got decent armor. But, you also run into the same issues that I just talked about. So, if we get rid of all of this, and we show that, A, you do not have a turtleback, as you can see. It does not go over it does not overlap the Citadel, which is what a turtleback armor scheme is. So you do not have an armor cap. The deck armor does not protect your Citadel from the sides. So you get rid of that, and look how high this Citadel sits above the water. Okay? It is easy to Citadel these ships, so keep that in mind. At any range. If you go broadside, you're going to get punished. Alright? Now, let's talk about the other build, shall we? If we don't go with the secondaries build, I think that you will find that you will have this a much better time. Obviously, you can run Palo de Revel and not have a secondary build. You could go use Charles Madden and Azure Lane Scharnhorst. Here's what I would usually use for Palo de Revel. For a normal build, and that helps get your accuracy kind of under control, but also helps boost the reload, because the reload on these things, like I've already discussed, is awful. So if you get the reload under control to where it's halfway decent, you can have a good time. Obviously, I usually run Artisan's Touch, which increases your penetration multiplier, so that's good as well. Does mean you overpen a lot more on cruisers, but generally speaking, it allows you to do a little more damage to battleships, because if you're getting broadsides into battleships, you're not always guaranteed to Citadel them, because you just don't have the penetration. However, if you run, like I said, I would still run not one for the nuisance. I would end up switching to Artisan's Touch, and I would still run this, and I would run this, and then of course I would have Charles Madden and Azure Lane Scharnhorst, or you could pop in Charles Madden with Hipper if you want a little bit of a boost to your secondaries, and you're a free-to-play person. You know, these are all options. You can boost your secondaries without completely destroying your ability to use your main guns under normal circumstances. And that's what I kind of liked about the battleship commander for the Germans, is the Hyde. It is a dispersion / secondary build. It is a perfect, like, little hybrid build. It's one of the few few lines in the entire game that actually gets a hybrid build, that allows you to have secondaries that are good, you get your extra heals, and on top of that, you get accuracy out of your guns. It's crazy, and it's kind of nice, even if those guns are still really, really inaccurate. Or at least they are for me. But the other one, obviously, if you don't want to run that, if you are not a pay-to-play or not a free-to-play player, you have Azure Lane Vittorio. Azure Lane Vittorio is the dispersion build commander that we always talk about. So you can see I run Palo de Revel still to get better reload on our guns. And we have Azure Lane Scharnhorst. We run Flammable Cannoneer, Gyrating Drill Bits, Marksmanship, Reaching Out XXL, and Will to Rebuild. And that would get you a better result in terms of just more consistent damage out of your ship. Okay, you're not always going to be in matches where the secondaries are a viable option. And a lot of times, especially in World of Warships Legends, you just don't have that option. Okay, So keep that in mind. Now, we already talked about the armor. Let's go overview. Agile, above average ability to change direction. I'd say it's average ability to change direction, and with our build, it's a little bit better. But nimble aim, above average main battery traverse speed. Again, I'd say that's pretty average for a Tier 7 battleship at 30 seconds for a traverse speed. It's pretty average. Exhaust smoke generator is obviously its gimmick, so you got that. I'm surprised that it didn't throw, like, SAP in there as one of the perks, you know, because that's kind of the thing for the secondary. But Vittorio Veneto, a series of new generation Italian battleships. They stood out as having good anti-torpedo protection and, at the time of their entry into service, for being among the fastest battleships in the world. Yeah, I mean, they're right there with Bismarck and all of those fast battleships that were at 30 knots. Obviously, the fastest battleships in the world, that belongs to the Iowa-class battleships. I know, right? Who'da thunk it? But there were 4 of them in the series, and we have 2 of them in the game, which is the Vittorio Veneto and the Roma. Now, obviously, Littorio is another one, I believe, that is the same class. So I think that there's a chance that may show up at some point in the future, because I think it's on PC, but I could be wrong. But yeah, so there's that too. So, we've already talked about all that. Let's take a look at the ship. And there's nothing much that you can say. It's a modern-looking battleship. The only odd thing about this is that they moved the rear turret and gave themselves plenty of room for a flight deck. But the rear turret, being where it's at, has awful firing angles. Like, awful firing angles. So, you have to go basically full broadside to take advantage of that rear turret, and that will get you killed. Especially up close. But you know, it is what it is. It's not a very large battleship. And that comes in handy for being able to maneuver. And like I said, it is decently able to maneuver. That's the good thing about it. We'll showcase some of that later as well. But you can see the secondaries. It looks like there's a bunch of secondaries, but you got to remember these are all like single turrets. Like there's no guns there. It's just one gun, one gun, one gun, one gun, one gun, one gun. So you get two triple turrets for the 152s, and then you got 6 single turrets of the smaller guns. Or maybe I'm reading that backwards. Maybe, I think that's right. I think the bigger turrets, the triple turrets are the 152s, and then the single turrets are your 90 mils. But the problem is, like, your secondaries are vulnerable, especially up close. Any sort of HE spam on your ship can easily knock out your secondaries. And if you lose one of these triple turrets, that's half of your major damage that you're looking for in your secondaries. Okay? And with the amount of HE spam that we get in this game, with all the cruisers and the destroyers and the battleships that shoot HE at you, like, getting close enough to utilize these secondaries with a full secondary build is just unreasonable most of the time. Which is why I said all along that if this thing does not get some sort of extended range with its secondaries, that a secondary build on this thing is just wasting your like resources. It's wasting your time. So with that being said, let's get into the gameplay. Alrighty, so we're going to be on Shatter, which is one of the newer maps, and it is perfect for a secondary build VV, aka Vittorio Veneto. Now, like I said, it's not that the secondaries for this ship aren't good. They really are. And if people are dumb enough to give you a broadside and these things are able to proc on them, things are going to go real spicy for them pretty quickly. Now, the downside of these is they're SAP, which means they cannot set fires. However, if people are broadside, or if they have less armor, there's a good chance that these don't need to do fires. They will actually just shred them. But, like I said, the biggest issue that I have with these is that they have such a limited range. If they came out with the base range of 7.5 kilometers, like the Massa, like the GK, like the Bismarck and the Brandenburg. If they came out with that base range of like 7.5, then the secondary build could be viable. But because they don't, you have to give up so much for secondaries that getting within 7.5 or 7.8 kilometers is just not easy to do, especially on most of the maps that we have. I mean, can you imagine running a secondary build and getting on Atlantic? like wide open waters with everybody able to just rail on you, and you can't even shoot them back because your primaries only have 16-kilometer range. Like, can we just talk about that? Like, that's awful, right? But you're gonna see here that with our booster running, obviously we're using the Epic Battle Booster, so we're able to shoot out to past 17 kilometers with the Brandenburg out there, and we get a good shot, and we actually hit him, which is even more surprising. We get 9,000 damage. And like I said, that's an outlier shot. Like, getting that kind of a hit from that range with a secondary build, Roma or Veneto here, not particularly gonna happen very often. Okay, now here I was anticipating the Brandenburgs charging in. I've been with these guys in like 3 straight matches, and in 3 straight matches they have done the exact same thing, which is just rush straight in. So I was anticipating these guys rushing in, so I wanted to put myself in a position to kite away from them if I had to. Getting into a fight with 2 Brandenburgs with torpedoes is not where you want to be. But as you can see, we got Vittorio Veneto over there, and he actually watches the channel. I didn't know it at the time. I knew the name. I've seen his name multiple times. I think even maybe going all the way back into World of Tanks console. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe he'll leave a comment down below and let us know. But yeah, I feel like I've known him for a while. And here you're going to see me screw up, and he will screw up as well. We're spotted. I try to use the reload booster for the secondaries, or the secondary booster, and we accidentally hit the smoke thing right off the bat. So unfortunately, not able to take advantage of shooting this Benson. And our Akatsuki smokes up immediately. Now, I understand the thought process behind wanting to smoke up immediately in your Akatsuki, but sometimes you gotta take it for the team a little bit. You can trade your hit points. You're in a very stealthy ship, and you can actually use that to your advantage later on and get yourself out of trouble. You never actually have to put yourself into trouble in a very stealthy destroyer. So trading some of your hit points to get rid of a DD that early in the game can be huge. But as you can see, these Brandenburgs did in fact rush in, and these guys are right here. But unfortunately for them, just like in the previous 3 games that we've played against these guys, they rush in, they die within minutes. Within 2 to 3 minutes, usually, these guys are completely dead. And it's solely due to the fact that they just rush in with reckless abandon, and they let themselves get into positions where they're just focused by everybody. I don't care what ship you're in, you're gonna get punished doing this sort of push. Like, I don't care if you got torpedoes or not, but you can see we're trying to get ahead of these guys, making sure that our ship doesn't get citadeled. You can see they hit towards the back of the ship. We're gonna get a shot here into Weimar, hoping, anyway. And I think we get a decent hit on him. But we actually overpin him with 4 shells. The Brandenburg was behind the island, so we did not get detected when we fired our shells. Now he's going to crash into the island, broadside on in front of us, and he still can't spot us because of the smoke screen of the destroyer. So we got to sit here and wait until we get reloaded, hoping that we can catch this guy in time. But this is where this awful reload just does not help. And again, there are things you can do to help make the reload a little bit more bearable as we completely miss the Brandenburg, but you can see his torpedoes completely miss us. And we're going to try to push up into the middle of the map. Now, obviously, somebody has pushed into the center cap and grabbed it. I'm assuming it's the Benson again, so we're going to try to push up and catch him off guard. Now, as soon as I commit to turning in here and going for this, we spot the enemy Vittorio Veneto in the center of the map. And we also spot the Benson. We're going to go ahead and prioritize, I'm trying to, use the priority sector on the secondaries to prioritize the destroyer. And you can see, those shells are doing significant damage with that semi-armor piercing. And now I have no choice. This guy's clearly torping me. He stopped firing his guns for a little bit, and so we have to turn in to avoid his torpedoes. He sends 1 wide, he sends 1 not wide, and we are going to get ourselves turned in. But we're also going broadside to the other Vittorio. So we swing back out, we get ourselves turning back in towards the Vittorio, so that we're not going to just sit broadside to the man. Because we've already shown what happens, or we've already talked about what happens if you're broadside in this ship to anything with any sort of good penetration. You will be citadeled, including heavy cruisers. Balti citadels the crap out of Roma. Ask me how I know. So you can see I'm thinking he was going to get spotted with his you know, proximity smoke firing penalty, but that doesn't happen. Panzerknack actually gets himself into a position where he's broadside, he fires his guns, but he's trying to use his smoke, and obviously that's not going to work out because we're within that 13.9 kilometer smoke firing penalty. Maybe he accidentally tried to do the same thing we did where we tried to use our secondary booster and we hit the wrong button. But you can see he did punch us there. We punched him, though, real hard. We got 2 full citadels plus some good penetrations. But you can see, even at this range, secondary's not really scoring a lot of damage here against battleships. They're just not. They're not doing any damage. They're hitting, they're not doing any damage, and you can't set fires. Now here, I thought for sure he was going for the ram. And he actually sends me a message after the fact saying that he decided not to ram me at the last second. So thank you to him for deciding not to ram me, because not gonna lie, that would have kind of slightly irritated me because I was having a decent game. But yeah, I'm glad that that was a thing. I mean, in retrospect, he could have easily rammed me there, probably should have rammed me there. We're gonna go ahead and shoot the rear guns at him. You can see the secondaries are pounding away at destroyers. Like, destroyers get shredded by these secondaries. Cruisers can as well if they're broadside. But that's really about it. And there's no risk of setting fire, so you're never going to get those damage over times that you get with the Germans and American secondaries. So, like, it's very situational where these secondaries are actually going to be helpful. And the next play that I make is actually the dumbest thing I could have done. I know darn well that everybody left on their team is over here on this far side. We got a Colorado, we got a Brandenburg, and we have a Z-35, I believe. Now, a Z-35, much like the Z-23, has a sonar, right? Completely forgot about it. And these guys are actually going to make me look like a freaking pleb. And well played by them, because, I'll be real honest, caught me off guard and made me a little salty at the time. Not gonna lie, but you can see these guys are literally just sailing broadside to me. I should have stopped right here. Just stopped right here. There's no reason for me to push in. I'm 8 kilometers away. Let me tell you why I moved in. And it's solely for one reason, and one reason alone. That is to try and use my secondaries. Yes, they are in range right now, but I wanted to turn out and get these secondaries to fire away. And you're going to see me actually try to target the Colorado with my secondaries and then use the main guns for the Brandenburg. Now, remember, there's still a destroyer over here. Okay? So me pushing up like this is making myself very susceptible to that destroyer. And you can see our secondaries are doing their job. And we, I do believe, end up getting close quarters on that Colorado. So it is a viable option if you're able to close the distance, but oh my god. Yeah, there's those torpedoes. Now, fortunately for me, they're German torpedoes, but they still hurt a lot. Now here, I probably should have sonar'd up. Or not sonar, but smoked up. Not for me, but for the guy that was behind me giving me will to rebuild. Now, he's dead. But, yeah, it's unfortunate, but that is the thing. Now here, this Brandenburg goes dark. He's in the smoke. We literally were looking right at him. And these guys have us sonar'd through their smoke. Brandenburg gets spotted just as he fires his guns at us and kills us. And that's the end of it. We should have fired our guns at the smoke. We would have likely hit the battleship. It's not like I'm shooting at a destroyer blind. It's a frickin' battleship. I should have took the shot. But, yeah, that was a really good play by that Z-35 to smoke up for his teammate and keep me sonar'd so that I couldn't shoot them, but they could shoot me. But there you have it. That is, like, the best game I've gotten so far. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people argue with me, oh, Spartan, but the secondary build, it's just, you're not good at the game, and you should do this, or you should do that. Okay, I'll take it. If that's your stance, if you think that this is a viable build for every single match in World of Warships Legends, by all means run it. But for me, I would either run a straight brawler secondary or brawler build where I maybe buff a little bit of the secondaries but don't completely nuke my main guns in the process. Okay? I'm not spending everything trying to max out these secondaries. And then on top of that, I think that I would probably prefer to run the dispersion build. That's personally my playstyle, the dispersion build. But, I mean, to each their own. Now, our team ends up winning this match pretty easily. We're going to go ahead and speed it up because this destroyer literally just... He torps this Brandenburg and then runs away for the rest of the match. So we're just gonna spare you guys that time. Alrighty, so while we get to enjoy the rest of this, I'm just gonna talk a little bit about why I say that the German and American secondaries are just better, and that is because they get the extended range. Now, I have a feeling that there's a chance that the Wargaming the developers will actually buff the range of these secondaries at some point, just to make it viable. Like I said, at its current state, you have to give up so much, and you get so little out of it. 7.8 kilometers of secondary range is not a viable secondary build. It just isn't. When you're fighting everything, cruisers with the ability to sit out at 18 or 19 kilometers, you can't even hit them. Battleships as well. Battleships shooting 18, 19, 20 kilometers, you're just never going to get a chance to shoot them. So giving up all of your range, all of your reload, like 32-second reload for 15-inch guns is awful. It's terrible. So while I think the ship can be decent enough, I just don't think that building solely for secondaries at this point in time is a good idea, given that you only get 7.8 kilometer range. But 111,000 damage, we did okay. Let me know what you guys' thoughts down in the comments are, and if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.